Hi, my name's Kit Hemsley and this is my shed. I'm going to go quickly through process of making one of my pieces. Because of the epidemic, I've started making much smaller pieces than I normally would. So I've started making ones that are, as part of a project, under 75 grams, which is tiny for my work. So this is Parian, which is a form of porcelain, which I love working with because it creates really nice translucent work, or semi-translucent work, at a low temperature, or not too high a temperature. I colour my own clay. These are iron oxides, so I have here a black iron oxide and a yellow iron oxide. These are all little 10-gram balls which I've already made. So that's 10 grams of yellow iron oxide. Well, yellow iron oxide coloured Parian. And this is black iron oxide, which has dried out a bit, which is the best one. That's the one. When I'm working with Parian, I have to keep the clay moist because it dries out rapidly. Alright, so I've got 40 grams of Parian, 10 grams of the yellow iron oxide coloured Parian, and this is the black iron oxide. A little bit like making puff pastry, it's just layering it all together. Every single piece I make is different, so I'm not particularly bothered if a piece moves slightly differently to how I'm expecting it to. The black oxide and the yellow oxide come out as shades of brown when they're fired, so they're a lot more subtle than they are when they're wet. So now I'm just folding over and starting to create layers. I know every time approximately what pattern I'm going to get, but you can't replicate it. It's only an approximation. This is slightly bigger than my smallest pieces I've been making recently, so this is going to come in at about 70 grams of wet clay, whereas some of the pieces I've been making have only been 30 grams. I'm working on a semi-damp tea towel because that keeps the clay from drying out too much. So I'm compressing the layers together. Now you can see as the clay is rolled out and thinned, the pattern starts to grow, and as you can tell, I could cut the same piece of clay and create something totally different every single time. Well, I do every single time. It cannot be replicated at all. So this side you can see totally different pattern, and part of my process is working out which pattern I like most and expanding it out, and which one will go on the top of the piece and which one will go on the bottom. So as I'm thinning it out, the colours and form are coming through. So all the time turning backwards and forwards. Till I get it the thickness I need it to be, and the pattern is where I want it to be. So all the time trying to keep the moisture in the clay. So that's the back. And what I do is I use this mould to drape the piece over. As you can tell, I have to work this when the clay is just at the right point, because if it's too wet it'll just flop, and if it's too dry it'll just crack. So this is using about 10 grams of Parian, so the whole piece comes in at about 70 grams, which I'm working to my under 75 grams of wet clay to all my pieces in this collection. Which I'm going to call my confined collection, because we're confined to home, and this is confined to under 75 grams of clay, which is great because what it actually has done is conserve clay supplies for me and give a structure to my work at the moment. I normally work in much bigger pieces. So what I'm doing now is just creating the foot, making sure that the join is strong between the foot and the bolt. Try to do most of my finishing at this stage. Right, so just see what, there we go. So that's a piece that weighs about 70 grams now in the wet weight of clay. Okay. I am just loading my kiln. Had the kiln for the last 5 years. It's a Cromarty. I've already loaded in 2 layers of work. A little bit like, I like to call it kiln Jenga, so you're fitting all the work in together. So you gradually build the layers up in this kiln, the elements around the outside, and you're stacking, but you have to make sure that there's room for the actual work to move around in the kiln, which it does because it gets so hot. This one here is copper oxide. goes in the kiln. You can see here there's some iron oxides, some black glaze stains, and there's some black and yellow glaze stains, and this is copper carbonate. So we'll see how it turns out. This is going on at 1220 degrees centigrade. It'll fire all day, and it will be cool enough to look at sometime lunchtime tomorrow. So this is overnight. As you can see, the iron oxide, black glaze stain, copper carbonate. Right, so those are the vanadium in the bottom. That's a weird coloration. Quite like it though.